Addiction was all around me growing up. I didn't have anyone to talk to about all the confusion and pain I was feeling. So I turned to drugs, and soon my addiction was hidden in plain sight. My name is Steve, and this is my hidden in plain sight story. I grew up in Harlem, in New York City, in the Lincoln Houses, one of the oldest projects in the city. My dad was a heroin addict, and so I was raised by a single mom. I remember at an early age, so many members of the family crossing over to using heroin and pills. I got a job at a shoe repair shop, Shining Shoes. That shop, I could be safe, and it kept me safe. But I had so many emotions and questions from what I had observed, from my dad to my family using. It infiltrated my spirit and filled me with a lot of pain and confusion. But I didn't know who to share this with. And when I went to high school, I met a fellowship of friends. This group of people used, started snorting heroin, and then quickly became an injection drug user. The high allowed me to be numb and not have to deal with anything. I moved into becoming a drug dealer. I had a lot of clout. My family name was well known and regarded, so people trusted me. I watched one of my friends be killed by a deal gone bad, but that didn't stop me. I just went deeper and deeper into addiction, into selling. At that point, I was mainly selling to old-time junkies, and one day I sold to a guy who I hadn't seen around before. He turned out to be an undercover police, and I got locked up for possession of heroin. As a result, I went through the system and ended up on Rikers Island for around 6 months. When I got out, my aunt gave me some money. And what I did with it is I went out, and the first thing I did was get high again. I was only 19 at the time. I finally had a realization that I didn't know how I was feeling and where I was going. I went to talk to my mom, and I shared with her that I was suffering from an addiction. I got connected with a man named Willie Horton, a recovered addict who had gotten his life together. He owned a storefront a block and a half away from where I lived. So I walked there and I said, Mr. Willie, I need some help. Mr. Willie got me connected with a program called Cadencia in the city of Philadelphia. That was in the year when they opened up in 1968. I was a member of that program in 1969. I remember driving there with my mom and my favorite aunt and feeling very scared, afraid, and alone, especially when they had to leave. As part of the program at that time, you had to make an investment. If you had money or a car or something that was of value, it was a stake in your own investment in the program. I didn't have either of those, so they asked me to invest my pride. They made me go up to the kitchen and yell that with much emotion until I said I was an addict and I needed some help. My name is Steve, and I'm a greasy dope fiend, and I need help. And thankfully, after yelling it, they believed it, and I was able to stay. Back then, the program was 18 to 24 months. I ended up staying for 30. We would go to schools in Harrisburg on a very special project at Camp Hill to talk to kids about drug addiction. I gained confidence and self-esteem. So in 1972, I was then asked to go to a place called Erie, Pennsylvania. And there we started to share the message about Cadencia to judges and other folks in the area. And that is what I did. Over the years, I worked with several programs in this area, including Purchase House, Abraxas, Andromeda House, and programs dealing with drug and alcohol collision. For many years, something bothered my spirit. I couldn't put my finger on it. Later, when I was overhearing a message in Narcotics Anonymous, I heard someone clarify that alcohol was a drug. And I then realized that unsettled spirit was my continued struggle with alcohol. Even though I stopped using drugs, I didn't stop drinking. And I realized it affected my life. And the most important healing for me was in my relationship with my dad. My dad eventually stopped using and we became pen pals. Boy, my dad was a prolific writer. Dad died of Alzheimer's. But before he did, I got to know him and our relationship was strengthened. Kids see too much going on with their family when addiction is involved. When everyone in their family does drugs, it becomes part of their life. They don't have anyone to help process the confusion and pain they're feeling. So they convince themselves of things that aren't true, that they're not good enough, that they're not loved, that they can't make a difference. They need people around them to tell them that they are loved, that they are good and good enough, and that they can make a difference. They need to know that the drugs sometimes prevent people around them, their parents or family, from telling them the truth. When they find self-worth, when they find healing from addiction, if they're already in addiction, and when they find the love of a group of people, they can get rid of the pain that they're feeling, and drugs won't be needed. But the first step is having the conversation or getting them the help. They can do this. Healing is possible. Get help today. Your life is precious.